You are watching the CCRI channel from the Community College of Rhode Island, online at ccri.edu/channel.
Welcome back to CCRI today. I'll be your host, Shelby Cray, and we're joined today from a coordinator of the Office of Student Affairs, Geraldine Picciotto.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how you doing?
Great.
So I've got a couple questions to ask you today.
Sure.
So tell us what you do in the Office of Student Affairs.
So I am the coordinator of student affairs, and I always say to people I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. Many students, faculty, people from the outside come into the office, and it's really my job to get them to the right person in the right department. So we have students who are looking for an advising. A lot of people just send students to me because they don't know where else to send them, and I swear they always say, well, Geraldine will know where to send them. So I do a lot of that. I do commencement for the college. A big part of that is in my job description. I also am a scheduler for the associate vice president. I help him with meetings and schedule different kinds of functions that are going on within the college. I work with other divisions on projects that we have in the college, and so it's a job that no 2 days are really ever alike, and I enjoyed that the most about the position.
Absolutely, you sound very busy.
Yes, especially this time of year when it is commencement.
Yes, so what brought you to CCRI?
I was working at Rhode Island School of Design in their fundraising office, and I had been there for about 8 years, and someone I worked with was telling me that she applied for a job at CCRI, and it was kind of what I was doing, and I had missed it. So she didn't get the job, I did, but it was a good opportunity. I was a single parent at the time, and at RISD it was just getting more and more pressure on me to do more and more, and I didn't feel that was where I should be at the time, considering the fact that I had a young daughter, and I needed to take care of her needs, not just mine. So when I saw the job, I applied for it and was fortunate enough to get the position. And here I am 24 years later.
Amazing.
Yes.
So I love a lot of things about CCRI. We have a lot of different classrooms here at the Warwick campus. We have the videography lab, which we're in, music, science. So what are some of the things that you love about CCRI?
I think I love the persistence of our students. Because a lot of them have never been to college. We have a lot of first-gen students, and they don't know the first thing to do, how to apply, what classes to take. I think over the years we've made it easier for students to be able to navigate our systems easier, but there are always those that may have some anxiety or are just plain old scared. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to solve a problem. So I think that that is one of the things that I love about CCRI. The second thing is watching the students graduate.
Yes.
It's great. When we brought it to the Dunkin' Donuts Center, and it's just standing in that arena. I always like to be right at the beginning of the arena when the students are marching in, because you can see the looks on their faces, how happy they are, how excited they are. And when family members start cheering for them, they're looking around to see where they are. So it's always a great feeling.
The 2022 commencement is coming up on May 12th.
It is.
So what is special about this year's event?
It's in person again. For the past 2 years, we have not been able to do in-person ceremonies, and currently there's no mask mandate, so we're thankful for that as well. I think that we also invited the classes of 2020 and 2021, so we have about 125 students from those two classes coming to attend the ceremony, which I think is great, because even for 2020, some students have moved on. So the class from 2020 is probably graduating from their four-year colleges this semester as well, so they're not as interested as coming to ours, but that's okay. We still have 125 students that will be there, and we're happy to be able to celebrate them in person.
Yeah.
And live.
Absolutely.
And at the Dunkin' Donuts Center,
Yes.
because we had to do it. We did a program last year, but it was in the Great Hall here at the Warwick campus. So while they loved it, each student had their own personal
Yes.
graduation ceremony. It just wasn't the same as being in a room full of 700-800
I
other
think
graduates.
that's a wonderful idea to
Yeah.
bring in the 2020 and the 2021 students who didn't get to have a graduation.
Right,
I think that's a fantastic idea
Yeah.
because, you know, it's very fulfilling
Yes.
to actually have that ceremony in person.
It is, and it's, everybody deserves that celebration.
Absolutely.
So we're happy to have those 125 students coming to join us.
So tell us about the COVID-19 pandemic. You know, how did that impact the 2020 and 2021 ceremonies? What was the biggest challenges you encountered?
The first year, because of course, you know, we had been planning to do it at the Dunk, and by March 13th, when we had all shut down, we realized that we weren't going to be able to do that, and I started looking for different ways to do a commencement ceremony that was not going to be in person, but that could also celebrate that class. And we ended up doing what they call a marching order program, whereas the students were allowed to take their own, we provided them with a cap and tassel and some you know, tokens from CCRI. We mailed them to all the graduates, and they were able to take their own photos.
Perfect.
And then upload those and then provide a quote.
Wow.
So, but every student, we have over 2,000 students that graduate, but every student is was in as part of the marching order, whether it was just their name and their academic credential, or their name, a photo, their academic credential, and a quote. So that was what we did for 2020. Kind of, it worked, but it was disappointing, and I think it disappointed a lot of students too. But there was no way we could bring everybody in.
Absolutely.
You know, we talked about so many different ways to do it. You know, everybody in the parking lot, but not every student has a car.
Yeah.
Put a sign in everybody's yard, but not every student has a yard. So we really felt that that was the best way to do it. For 2021, we did another type of program that I found somewhere else called a grad walk. So for 6 days, we invited students to schedule a time that they could come in with their families, a few members, I think it was 4 or 5 members that could join them.
Well, I hate to cut you off, but we'll talk about it more after the commercial break.
Okay.
And we'll come back to talking about the commencement.
You're tuned in to the CCRI channel from the Community College of Rhode Island, online at ccri.edu/channel.
You're watching the CCRI channel from the Community College of Rhode Island online at ccri.edu/channel.
Hello and welcome back. So we were just talking about the 2021 commencement and the grad walk, so you can continue talking on that.
Great, thanks. So what we did was we invited students to schedule their own grad walk, bring their families in. Faculty and staff helped us check the students in, but also helped with reading the students' names as they crossed the stage. And a film crew was there to film the whole thing and put that whole 6 days of walks together in a seamless fashion. And then we posted it live on the web page on the actual commencement date, so that students could go ahead and see their walk. And it really was 99% no complaints whatsoever. Of course, there was always one or two, but it was the person didn't realize that when we put the whole thing together, it was by day, not by name. So, but we ended up clearing that up. So it ended up being perfectly. And students really appreciated the fact that it was almost like an individual ceremony for each and every one of them. And we had about almost 600 students participate. So
Wow.
it was a crazy 6 days, but it was enjoyable, tiring, but very enjoyable.
Yes.
And the students were really happy to have that for 2021.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like those went really well, you know,
Yes.
despite the challenges.
Correct.
So when did the college decide that the 2022 commencement ceremony would return to being in person?
So we started thinking about it, well, last fall, of course, but and in December we really started looking at things, and that's when cases started going up for the COVID, so we weren't sure what was going to happen. So we basically presented 3 different plans to the leadership, and when all was said and done, they felt that the best plan was just to do it in person at the dunk with everyone there. Because it's just a different feeling. So I'm thankful that they went along with that plan, because the other 2 were going to be really kind of difficult to pull off. We would have done it, but it was going to be more difficult. So it was probably in February, early February, that the decision was made to go to the dunk. And honestly, when all the mask mandates went away, that's when we decided that we weren't going to have to do masks or anything like that. There will be some social distancing when the students are seated, but the Dunkin' Donuts Center is open for everybody. There's no seating limitation. They're not doing any kind of 3 or 6 foot distancing. So I was excited that we decided to come back and just go for it with a full-blown ceremony with no restrictions on the students.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yes, it's
So-
going to be I'm very excited about it.
Yes, I am
I'm always
too.
glad on May 13th too, because that's the day after when I can breathe a little sigh of
again.
relief. Yeah, exactly,
yes.
exactly, yes.
So what challenges did you encounter making that decision, going back into person?
So one of the things that we wanted to do was to supply masks for the students, because we didn't know what the mandate was going to be, and we
Yes.
found these online masks, KN95 masks, and we just had CCRI imprinted on them. So we were going to give one of those to every student. Well, we didn't need to do that. So fortunately, the dental
nice
division,
gesture.
the dental department needs masks, so we supplied them with some KN95 masks that say CCRI on
that's-
them
it's
for the
perfect.
dental hygiene clinic.
It's
So
perfect that you were able to reuse
it
them.
is perfect. It is perfect. And I think one of the other challenges is remembering everything that we did for the dunk, or did at the dunk for the students. The Dunkin' Donuts Center, they're really good about helping us pull off a really good ceremony. So it's just making sure that we have everything in place that that we need to have in place. The other issue is the supply chain issues. So we produce a program book, and we had to order everything in early March, which is not usually how we do it. So, how many pages? Well, we can't always predict how many pages, because we don't know how many students are going to end up being in that program book. So some of the supply chain issues were also issues that affected what we were doing as well. Fortunately, we're able to overcome those, and we've got everything in place and everything that we need.
Perfect. So what are you most excited about?
I'm most excited about that it is back in person, because it
Yes.
just is. If you go to the commencement homepage, and you can see the president standing there, and it's her back, but it looks out into the crowd, and when you see that, you go, wow, that's really pretty cool to.
Such a difference.
It is such a difference. And this one is bittersweet for me, because it's actually my last one. I will be retiring from CCRI in December. So I will be happy to pass that gauntlet on to somebody else. A little, sad, but it's still, somebody else is going to do just a fine job, just like I did.
I'm sure. I'm so glad that you were able to help us with the time that you had here, and I'm so glad you were able to come and do this as a career.
Thank you.
So, if you could give one piece of advice to the students graduating this year, what would it be?
I kind of have two, because that's who I am.
Absolutely.
So the first one, I saw a military, high-ranking military official give a commencement speech at a graduation, and I just thought his first piece of advice was to have one goal every day, and one goal is to make your bed every day, and that allows you to say, oh, I completed a goal for today. So I thought that was a really good piece of advice. Do I always follow it? No. The second piece of advice would be from Dr. Seuss's Oh, the Places You'll Go, and if you don't mind, I'd like to just read a little
Absolutely. Go
snippet
ahead.
from it. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your own, and you know what you know, And you are the person who'll decide where to go.
That's beautiful.
Thanks. I just think that just says it all. It's all up to you, and you made it this far. You walked the stage, and now you can go out and do anything that it is that you want to do with your life.
You are watching the CCRI channel from the Community College of Rhode Island, online at ccri.edu/channel.
You're watching the CCRI channel from the Community College of Rhode Island, online at ccri.edu/channel.
My name is Rosemary Thibodeau. I've been living here at Indian Lake for about 23 years. My friend of over 50 years, Raymond Patriarca Jr., inherited this property from his father. This was his father's summer place and getaway, and there used to be lots of good times going on down here, many parties. Card parties going on in the back shed, lots of good food being cooked, lots of enjoyment had by all. Well, the primary use for the house was a summer cottage. This was originally a one-bedroom cottage, and it was built in 1944. And then in the early 70s, an addition was put on with a second floor kitchen and a large bedroom. Years ago, there used to be AA meetings held here, and so the Serenity Prayer is very popular within the AA community. And so that's how the name Serenity Shores came about, but it was then lengthened to Serenity Shores, a sunny place for shady people. And that reflects the original owners of this property. Raymond and I have been friends since we were 18 years old. We first met at a party on the east side, and then the second time we met was at River Road in Providence, which was a very popular place, meeting place for youth back in the day. Well, as I say, Raymond and I have been friends for over 50 years, and so I can relate to a lot of the history of this house, the stories, and I enjoy all of this. I enjoy living with it. I'm comfortable with it. I enjoy living on 5 acres of land. Just a lot of artifacts, some of the furniture, the bar that you see behind me. This was all hand carved by inmates at the ACI during the, I would say, 60s period. And then this was delivered down here by some of the correctional officers. Raymond was very well loved in the correctional system. The bar is all handmade, all hand carved in the front. It's all a cowboy motif, kind of enlightening and enhancing the Indian Lake era. The top of the bar is all hand carved, and there are other tables in the room that have the same, carry on the same theme throughout the early cowboy era. The O'Toole sign? Okay, that's a lantern out in front that has two dogs that were owned by Raymond Sr. and his wife, and her name was Rita O'Toole, and she came down in the, I would say, early 60s and met the owner of this property, who owned quite a few properties in this Indian Lake area, and handed him $5,000 and a handshake, and this land became hers. This is a grave site of Raymond's dog, Pepe, a poodle, and you can see he was born in 67 and lived till 84. Pretty good life for a little poodle. What I most love about living here at Indian Lake is the privacy. I love gardening. I have acres and acres that I can garden in. I have a German Shepherd, Nyla, and I can bring Nyla up in the back, and she can run and run and run and feel free. I love the fact that my son lives behind me in a cottage belonging on this property, and his children can run and do things on this property. And it's just a wonderful place to live.
Yes, my name is Chris Thibodeau. I've lived here for 19 years. So yes, we have seen a lot of old photos and heard a lot of stories. There's obviously a lot of artifacts around as well. There used to be a lot of, we'll say, connected Rhode Island individuals that would spend time in the card games that used to go down, and cigars.
During the period that I've lived here, there have been many significant events. We've had pig roasts, weddings, Christmas parties, birthday parties, graduation parties. We've had a host of parties, and back in the day when Raymond Sr. lived here with his wife, there were many parties. It's just a very important part of Raymond Jr.'s family history. He has so many artifacts here that belong to his father, and if he wants to reminisce or see something, he can just call and ask me if I might film that for him, and I will. Raymond Sr.'s Cadillac, I'm not sure exactly what year it is, but it's been garaged for many, many years. And there was an attached sauna next door, and there was a fire, and the neighbor across the street came over and was able to get the car out of the garage so that it didn't catch on fire.
It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of things to do outdoors, and it's a pretty quiet and peaceful place. Living on Indian Lake, we have a playground. It's a community, and we have a private beach. There's lots of boating. We have kayaks, canoes. We spend a lot of time on the water in the summertime and spring and fall. There's wonderful fishing down here. We have a lot of bass tournaments that go on during the season, and it's just a great, safe place to live. Well, in general, there's this song called Indian Lake by the Cowsills, a famous Rhode Island band, and they say Indian Lake is a scene you should make, and I think that's true for anyone who wants to enjoy the outdoors and stop by when you drive by number 136 and wave.
You are watching the CCRI channel from the Community College of Rhode Island, online at ccri.edu/channel.
As the COVID-19 vaccines become available, you might be asking yourself, should I get it? And if I do, will I be able to go about life without putting my family at risk? You've got questions, and that's normal. The fact is, the vaccines are safe and effective. They're going to save lives. To get the latest on the COVID-19 vaccines, visit getvaccineanswers.org, because getting back to the moments we miss starts with getting informed. It's up to you.
Child care program owners that I know, several of them didn't make it. They closed. We already work on a very tight profit margin in our field, and being closed for 3 months significantly hurt income. Many of the people who pay private paying customers did not pay for 3 months. However, the electric bills and all of the overhead still had to be paid. My name is Erica Sacosio. I am the owner and president of Family Tree School Age Enrichment Program. I have been in the child care field for 22 years. Of those 22 years, I've been an owner of my own facility for 13 years. I feel that child care is important all the time. As an educator, I'm very passionate about it. I feel that the relationships that children make with their teachers, with their peers, is crucial, especially during times of stress like we have right now with COVID. Putting academics aside, certainly academics are really important, but I feel like for this year more than ever, the social and emotional piece. Children really need stability and a sense of normalcy. And you see now with the media, you'll see, suicide rates have gone up, depression has gone up. And I feel like that's really where after school programs, distance learning, early education really comes into play, so children can still have those positive interactions with their peers. So although there was the COVID-19 shutdown, many business owners, we were not shut down. We were working our tails off trying to figure out how to restructure our businesses, where we were going to find funding, what was it going to even look like when we opened, how were we going to just make it all work. And then, of course, our own being human beings, afraid too, like what were we going to expose ourselves to? We shot videos for our families just about every week to give them an update of what childcare would look like when we reopened. We stayed in contact quite a bit, and families would keep asking us, when are you open? When are you open? And we really couldn't tell the answer. We didn't even know we were being shut down until we saw it on the news. So as COVID started to roll out and the guidelines became more and more formalized, then we got more information. It was in a timely manner. But again, it's hard to prepare for something that's never happened before.
I definitely feel it's crucial to have child care available during this time, because the children need the social interaction. My son being home for 3-4 months, he missed out on his friends, having the availability to the teachers here working with the children, more than just a mom and a son relationship working for school. It was important to have him know that teacher-child relationship with learning to grow developmentally.
We had to make several changes, like most businesses. We had to pivot and reconstruct the services that we offered. Some of the things we did was we expanded our distance learning program. We consolidated some of our infant toddler classrooms to make space for the school-age children. We had to do that because infants and toddlers were not coming back as quickly as some of the other ages. And we had an overabundance of school-age families because schools in our city did not reopen right away. We had to change regulations. We had to contact our DCYF worker. Certainly we had to change furniture out because infant toddler classroom furniture would not be conducive for school-age children. We had to upgrade our internet service. That was interesting. That was certainly a big challenge as 77 students came in and all logged into their Chromebooks at once. Our computer system, our internet service crashed multiple times. So we had to contact Verizon and have our whole system redone so it could hold 77 devices. But we wouldn't have known that before. We've never tried to have that many devices under one roof. So that was a challenge.
So as a parent, the difficulties were making sure my children were doing their schoolwork for their teachers and trying to communicate with their teachers what needed to be done, their expectation. In a classroom, it's a little different than at home. With working in childcare, I was shut down, so I had the availability that I didn't have to go in as an emergency responder, so I was home, so I didn't still need the childcare. But I also, I was never a stay-at-home mom, so I was bored. I was only doing schoolwork. I made sure I was walking every day to stay healthy, talking to employees that I got closer to. Like, we would check in on each other. The owner, Miss Erica, was amazing with staying in touch with her employees and checking in and making sure if we needed anything. There was a very close, and Miss Chris also. If we needed anything, more of like a family. So I felt my employers were, definitely Family Tree is a family, because at this time we definitely stuck together.
Some of the benefits was the importance of childcare. I think it was maybe an industry that might have been overlooked and sometimes taken for granted. So an example would be state-funded children, perhaps. So we have been advocating for higher tuition rates for a significant amount of time, especially around the school-age children. And during the pandemic, the state had really recognized the work that we were doing and started to pay at a level that really helped cover the costs. Because prior to COVID, school-age programs were pretty much operating at cost and sometimes even below, the cost to provide that service to families. It's been very hard to find employees that are willing to come back. My industry, in particular, teachers, not even just in childcare, but even licensed teachers are retiring or changing fields, mostly because they're afraid. We are exposed to lots of different people who come into the building. A typical, school could have 700, 800 students. And then you just multiply that by their family and friends, etc. It's much a higher risk than somebody who works in an office building with 8 people. So people were leaving our field. And the sad thing is it's really the more experienced people who are close to retirement. So retaining staff was a major problem for all programs, still is now. At first, children were very nervous and very stressed. And some of them were afraid to come back. So there were a lot of emotions. Some were happy to come back to childcare. Some were afraid. Some were afraid that something was going to happen to their parents, that their parents were going to get sick and die. Some of them were nervous that they were going to get it and bring it back to their parents because that was the big focus in the media. Some children were excited about having a Chromebook, but then nervous about doing work, schoolwork on them. Some of them were nervous because they didn't really know how to use them. I would say now that school has done the hybrid version, children have definitely come much more alive. I think that having just, school be school and after school programming be after school program was a big relief for all of us. Because we typically were the place where they came and had fun and were able to interact with their friends and play sports and do cooking and art and drama and all those really fun things. And that's what they were very accustomed to when they came to us. And in September, it wasn't like that. In September, it was we had to all be quiet and put on our headphones and sit in a chair for 6 hours, which was stressful for everybody. I'm just grateful. I think just continuing to focus on what I love to do. I mean, at the end of the day, we talk about revenue, but at the end of the day, it's never been about revenue for me. It's really always been about the kids. That's my why. Providing a place that felt like family. A lot of companies use that term, but really it is 100% of what we're about at Family Tree. My students have been with me for years, years and years. I mean, some of the children in my school age program I had as babies. So just worrying about their families and their mental health and how they're doing through all this is something that weighs on my mind heavily. Being there for my staff too. During the pandemic, we did not fire one person. We did not lay off one person other than the mandated state closing. As soon as we got the go-ahead to open, we took back 100% of our staff that came back. We didn't cut salaries. We didn't cut hours. We didn't cut anything. We made it work because I needed to make sure that they could feed their family and that they could... I feel emotional just even talking about it. It was a lot of stress. It was a lot of work to make that happen. I mean, everybody talks about, these 3 months off. Small business owners that really are in it, we were never off. We were never off. And I think this is probably the first time that we could actually breathe and take a breath of like, we made it through it. We can breathe and just feel like, wow, like there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
You are watching the CCRI channel from the Community College of Rhode Island, online at ccri.edu/channel.
There's no other ballpark in the United States of America quite like Cardines Field. The history of that place, it goes back to the 1800s when the grounds were first used for baseball. It was an old railroad catch basin. There was a big kind of swampy area, a lot of stagnant water. They used the water for the old steam engines in downtown Newport. The neighbors at Cardines Field were complaining in the 1800s. They wanted to see those old catch basins drained, and the railroad workers were more than happy to comply. They drained off enough area to cut out for a baseball diamond and a bit of an outfield. Informal baseball, and even some formal baseball, was being played there. But then in the early 1900s, around 1908, you've got some serious baseball action happening at Cardines Field.
Yeah, when you talk about history, there were barnstorming teams that traveled around the country and they made stops in Cardines Field. Some of the greatest baseball players in America, whether you're talking the Negro Leagues or Major League Baseball, guys just coming up, got their start, and they traveled to Cardines Field and played there.
Phil Rizzuto, Bob Feller, Satchel Paige were in the Navy, who had ties to the Navy, who came to Naval Station Newport. Those guys are baseball players, so they were seeking somewhere to play, and they did come over to Cardines and play baseball.
The grandstand itself, the modern structure of the ballpark, that's another part of American history because, of course, in the 1930s, you had the Great Depression, and FDR came along with alphabet soup, a lot of different governmental agencies designed to stimulate the economy, get Americans back to work and out of the Depression. One of those agencies was the WPA, the Works Progress Administration. One of many, many projects that that agency completed in the 30s were public works projects dedicated to athletics and sports. But Cardines Field is definitely one of the gems of that era. In World War I, a lot of immigrants served in the United States Army and were deployed into Europe in combat. That included Bernardo Cardines. Bernardo Cardines was a young Italian immigrant in Newport. He was the first resident of Newport to lose his life fighting for the United States in World War I. The field was named in his honor. Cardines Field has history, but it hosts one of the more historic amateur baseball leagues in the United States, the George Donnelly Sunset League. Can play in 1919 at Cardines Field. And they call it the Sunset League because at the time, Cardines didn't have lights. When the sun went down, the players went home. It didn't matter what the score was or what inning it was.
And now you have that tradition and that history repeating itself today when you look at some of the amateur leagues that have played there, whether it's the New England Collegiate Baseball League, you have the high school baseball, the Sunset League is the longest running amateur league in the country. That's still playing at Cardines Field. So you have all that history and that tradition, and it's still going on here today.
Over time, Cardines was threatened. The economy of Newport began to change. The Navy, which still has a presence in Newport, began to move a lot of the destroyers and the ships that were stationed there out. And without that Navy personnel, some of the nightlife in Newport and some of what gave Newport its charm began to fade. And that's when the economy of Newport really started to transition full on into a tourism economy. And when you have a tourism economy, you need infrastructure. You need places for people to park. And Cardines, for a time, was being looked at as a place to be demolished for added parking in Newport. That, of course, would have been devastating. And a number of Newport residents said, no, we're not gonna let that happen. And not just Newport residents, a number of residents of Aquatic Island, Middletown, Portsmouth, Newport, they came together and they said, we want to preserve Cardines Field. Baseball being played at Cardines is too important. Whether it's the Sunset League, American Legion, or Salve Regina, or Rogers High School, or all these other leagues and teams that called Cardines Field home from time to time, it was too historic to let go. And that's when you started to see some of the work done to the field to renovate it, to improve it. By the time the Newport Gulls came along in 2001, and they firmly established themselves as one of the premier summer college baseball teams in the country, certainly the premier summer collegiate baseball team in the NECBL in all of New England. And they called Cardines their home, and Newport fell in love with the Gulls.
The pitch, swinging a line shot, great to Millie, steps in the bag at second for the double play. Or is it a triple play? It's a triple play, can you believe it?
Now, the Gulls are there in June and July and August, and on Mondays and Friday nights, 4th of July weekend, they'll bring in 3,000 fans, 3,500 fans to that ballpark. And the place just comes alive. The atmosphere, the excitement of the ballpark. You walk in and you can really feel it. And what makes Cardines so special, especially in the modern era, is the success of the Gulls. The Gulls have been such an important franchise in the NECBL. They've won 6 NECBL championships. And many of those championships, all of those playoff series, were right there in downtown Newport, seen by thousands of fans, rocking Cardines Field. 2020 brought challenges to our society like we've never faced before. And the COVID-19 pandemic really, really challenged athletics. It challenged athletics at every level, from the major league level and professional sports right on down to the little league. Cardines Field was no exception. You've got a lot of leagues that use that ballpark that just could not play in 2020. You've got a lot of players that are trying to develop their skills, trying to learn the game of baseball and maybe even make a career out of it. And those players were harmed in 2020 by the COVID-19 pandemic, by their inability to play.
It was grim for a little bit there as we were awaiting the decision by the New England Collegiate Baseball League as to what we were going to do for the summer. But we stayed headstrong and we stayed optimistic and positive that we'd be able to play baseball in some capacity. And the government, local, state officials, and the CDC all gave the go-ahead that we could do it in a safe manner. We hit the ground running and were able to put together a league at Cardines Field with some of the individuals who were going to play for the Newport Gulls, some players who were going to play in the New England Collegiate Baseball League, the Cape Cod League, some of the neighboring leagues here. And one of the big ultimate draws was Cardines Field. The fact that we were playing at this historic, famous ballpark drew in individuals from all throughout New England.
It's interesting walking into Cardines Field for the first time. I walked in there for the first time for a high school baseball game. I was broadcasting it. for public access television. And when I walked in, it hits you right away. You see the historic nature of the grandstands, how old everything is, how untouched by time so much of the ballpark. Over a decade with the Newport Gulls, I saw so many times the faces of those players when they walked into that ballpark the first time and their mouth was agape. They were completely taken aback by that ballpark. Not
once you look out to the field, it's those juts, it's those alleyways that fields the like of Ebbets Field, Fenway Park, Wrigley, that were all made during that same era, that have that same feel and ultimately impression on those that play there and watch games there. And big name, Hall of Famer that comes to mind is Mike Schmidt. He loves coming down to Cardines Field.
The play we just saw, I guess you guys know that being here all summer, the sun's in the first baseman's eyes over there.
Had the fortune to meet the spaceman, Bill Lee.
I love this field. It's set up just like a big league field. The hitter's got a good background. And the sun, wear glasses. Pick the ball up on the bat. It's a big center field here, so you got to really play them straight away.
There are very few places that have an identity. When you walk into them, you know you're there. You can get a sense of the history. You feel it in your bones. There's something about it. And when you walk into Fenway Park, you walk into Cardines Field, you get that sensation, you get that chill down your spine. You think about all of the baseball that's been played there, how it started, and the fact that it's still there. That something this old still exists. You don't get that anymore with the modern stadiums. Sure, they're beautiful, they look great, but they don't have that it factor, that personality. You just don't get that anywhere else like you do when you walk into Cardines Field. It's a really special place. There's just nothing else like it.
It's interesting, a few years ago I was working for the Newport Gulls collegiate baseball team, and randomly I was connected with Bernardo Cardines' great-nephew, Bernardino Cardines, who himself is a retired professor. He lives in Venafro, Italy, and he was doing research on his family and his great-uncle who emigrated to America well over 100 years ago, and trying to find out more about him. And he had no idea his whole life that his uncle had a baseball park in Newport, Rhode Island named after him. So for Bernardino Cardines to uncover this history, his own family history, and he's sitting over halfway around the world in Italy and learning about this ballpark, learning about American baseball. And I think one day it'd be great to see him visit America and walk into the ballpark that's named for his great uncle who gave his life in World War I.
You are watching the CCRI channel from the Community College of Rhode Island, online at ccri.edu/channel.